Bring me my 3 sons now, today.
Whatever test this is, Papa, I have already won it before it started. Father, we are grown men, not children for games. Some of us have real business waiting. I am here, Papa. What do you need from me?
Each of you will receive 1 grain of corn. In 1 year, return to me and show what it has become.
A grain of corn? Papa, are you serious right now? I run contracts worth millions.
This is more serious than anything you have ever touched in your life.
This is beneath us, Father. We are your sons. That should be enough.
Whoever proves himself worthy will inherit everything I have built. Whoever fails will lose more than money.
I will not fail you, Papa.
1 year, 1 grain. Everything will be decided.
Chief Anthony Eze's hands trembled as he gripped his walking stick, his breath thinner with each passing week, his body betraying the iron will that had built an empire of farmland and trade across Enugu. He had 3 sons. He had 1 fear. That fear was not death. It was leaving his fortune to men who loved his money more than they loved him. He called them on a Sunday morning, the compound still smelling of fresh palm wine and roasted yam from the previous night's gathering. Michael arrived first, dressed in an agbada too fine for a simple family meeting, his shoes polished to mirror the morning sun. David came next, scrolling through his phone, barely lifting his eyes to greet his father. Victor came last, wiping dust from his trousers, having walked from the farm settlement where he managed his father's smaller plots without complaint or recognition. "Sit," the old man said, and they sat. He opened his palm. Inside lay 3 grains of corn, small and unremarkable, the kind any market woman in Enugu would sell for less than 10 naira. "1 year from today," the old man said, his voice steady despite his weakening body, "you will return to me and show me what this single grain has become. Whoever proves himself worthy of what I have built will inherit everything. The land, the trade routes, the warehouses, all of it." Michael laughed before he could stop himself. "Papa, is this a joke? A grain of corn? I run contracts worth millions. Give me something serious to prove myself with." "This is serious," the old man said. "More serious than you understand." David did not laugh, but his face twisted with irritation. "Father, with respect, I have a business degree from University of Nigeria. I do not need a farming riddle to prove I deserve my inheritance. I am your son. That should be enough." Victor said nothing. He simply reached out, took his grain, and closed his fist around it gently, as though it weighed more than gold. That night, Michael threw his grain into the gutter behind his Lekki apartment without a second thought. "An old man's foolishness," he muttered to his girlfriend, who laughed and poured him another glass of wine. He had bigger plans, a car import deal that promised to triple his money within months, financed by a loan against his father's name, a name he used freely while pretending independence. David kept his grain in a drawer and forgot about it within a week. He had his own ambitions. A fintech startup he was certain would make him a millionaire long before his father's year was up, fueled by his father's connections that he called in without asking, dropping the Eze name in boardrooms across Abuja, while telling himself he had earned every meeting on his own merit. Victor planted his grain in a small patch of soil behind his modest house in the farm settlement, the same humble plot of land his brothers mocked him for choosing to live on instead of the city apartments their father's wealth could easily afford. He watered it each morning before sunrise. He weeded around it by hand. He spoke to no one about it because no one would have cared to listen. The months passed differently for each son. Michael's import deal collapsed when the shipment was seized at the port over unpaid duties he had assumed someone else would handle. The loan he had taken against his father's name came due, and when he could not pay, the bank began calling Chief Anthony directly, exposing the deception. Michael begged his father not to intervene, promising a new deal that would fix everything, and the old man, though disappointed, quietly paid the debt himself, watching his eldest son sink further into a pattern of borrowed confidence and real recklessness. David's fintech startup burned through investor money faster than it earned trust. He hired friends instead of talent, threw lunch parties instead of building products, and when the company collapsed, he blamed everyone but himself, his co-founder, the market, the economy, even his father for not connecting him with the right investors early enough. He took a second loan, then a third. Sinking deeper into debt, he hid from everyone, smiling at family gatherings as though nothing was wrong, while creditors multiplied behind closed doors. Victor's corn grew slowly, the way real things grow. By the third month, a single green stalk rose from the soil, fragile but alive. He saved seeds from that first harvest and planted again, expanding his small patch by inches each season. He told no one. The village women who passed his farm on their way to market sometimes laughed, calling him the rich man's son who plays in that, not knowing what debt could become when someone refused to abandon it. Then the dry season came harder than anyone in Enugu had seen in a decade. Rivers thinned to muddy trickles. Market prices for grain tripled, then quadrupled as supply chains buckled under the drought stretching across the eastern states. Families that had once eaten 3 times a day now stretched single meals across entire households. Chief Anthony's own warehouses, full of trade goods but empty of food reserves, could not feed the extended family network that depended on him during hard seasons, a network that included cousins, in-laws, and the very community that had built his name. Michael, drowning in unpaid debts and a damaged reputation, could not even feed his own household properly, having spent everything chasing deals that existed only on paper. His girlfriend left when the wine ran out and the apartment rent fell 3 months behind, taking with her the last set of curtains she had bought for herself, as though even the fabric on the windows no longer belonged to a man who could not provide. He showed up at his father's compound that season, not with answers, but with desperate requests for emergency cash. His expensive agbada now worn thin at the collar, unwashed for weeks, the same garment he had once worn to mock his father's foolish test, now hanging off him like a costume from a performance that had ended badly. He sat outside the gate for nearly an hour before knocking, rehearsing excuses that crumbled each time he tried to say them aloud. When his father's steward finally let him in, Michael could not look the old man in the eye. He spoke instead to the floor, to his own scuffed shoes, to anything that was not his father's steady gaze. "Papa, it is just a small bridge loan. The market will turn. I know it will turn." Chief Anthony said nothing for a long moment, then quietly instructed his accountant to settle the debt on the condition that Michael never speak of it to his brothers. Michael agreed immediately, grateful and ashamed in equal measure, not yet understanding that his father's silence was not mercy alone. It was a final quiet test to see whether shame might still teach him what pride had not. David, hiding from creditors who had finally tracked down his Abuja address, returned to Enugu quietly, avoiding eye contact with neighbors who once respected the Eze name he had spent so freely. 2 men in that jacket had begun appearing outside his apartment building in the evenings, polite but persistent, asking the security guard when Oga David usually returned home. He left in the night with 2 suitcases and told no one, but his mother, who wired him just enough money to survive the journey, back without asking the questions she already feared the answers to. He told his father the startup had pivoted and was in stealth mode, a lie so transparent that even his mother, visiting from her sister's house, looked away in embarrassment when he said it aloud. Chief Anthony listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable, and when David finished speaking, the old man simply asked one question. "And the grain I gave you, where is it now?" David opened his mouth, found nothing true to say, and closed it again. The silence between them stretched longer than any answer could have filled it. Victor's farm, by contrast, had grown into nearly 2 full acres of corn, planted in patient succession across the months, each harvest reinvested into the next planting. He had taught himself irrigation by watching agricultural videos on a borrowed phone late at night, then built a simple channel system using discarded pipes and his own calloused hands, digging trenches alone on weekends when his small income from managing his father's lesser plots did not stretch far enough to hire help. When the drought hit, his irrigation system kept enough of his crop alive to feed not only his own household, but his immediate neighbors, the same ones who once laughed at him over the fence each morning, calling him the farmer prince, with a mockery that stung more than he ever let them see. Word spread quietly through the settlement that the useless son had food when even wealthier families did not. An elderly widow 2 houses down, who once told her grandchildren not to bother greeting that foolish Eze boy, found herself at his gate one evening, ashamed but desperate, asking if he had any corn to spare for her grandchildren's dinner. Victor filled her basket without hesitation and refused to take the few naira notes she tried to press into his hand. "Mama, just remember this kindness when it is your turn to give," he told her, and she left in tears, her earlier mockery replaced with something closer to reverence. By the time the year approached its end, the village began to whisper a different story about Chief Anthony's sons, one the old man heard clearly despite his sons' efforts to hide their failures from him. Market women spoke of it between sales. Children repeated fragments of it on their way to school, not fully understanding the weight of what they were saying, only that the rich man's foolish son had become the one neighbors now greeted with respect, while the 2 successful sons had grown strangely absent from the village they once visited only to be admired. The day of reckoning arrived on a cool morning in late harvest season, with the extended family gathered in the compound courtyard. Aunties, uncles, cousins, long-time friends of the family, all summoned by Chief Anthony himself, who had grown frail but whose eyes remained sharp with purpose. He sat on his carved wooden chair beneath the mango tree, his walking stick resting against his knee, and called his 3 sons forward one at a time. "Michael, show me what your grain became." Michael's hands shook as he stepped forward, his polished shoes from a year ago now scuffed and unpolished. The agbada he wore had been borrowed for the occasion, a poor imitation of the confidence he had walked in 1 year earlier. "Papa, the grain, I do not have it. I lost it. But Papa, I built something bigger. I built a business that collapsed, leaving me to pay your debts in secret, debt you took against my name without my knowledge." Gasps rippled through the gathered family. An auntie seated near the back covered her mouth with her wrapper. Michael's mouth opened, but no defense came. His secret had never truly been secret, only unspoken, and now it stood exposed in the one place he had hoped it would never reach. "David," the old man said next, "show me your grain." David's voice cracked before he even finished his sentence, his fingers twisting the hem of his shirt the way they had when he was a small boy caught lying about broken plates. "Father, the corn was symbolic. I understood that immediately, so I focused on real wealth, on the company that left you hiding from creditors in your own father's house," the old man said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent courtyard. "Tell them, David, tell your aunties and uncles what stealth mode truly means. Tell them about the men who came to your apartment in Abuja asking for you by name." David's face flushed with shame as murmurs spread through the family. His mother covered her mouth. His cousins exchanged glances they tried to hide. The lie he had carried for months collapsed in seconds, stripped bare before everyone whose respect he had quietly courted while secretly drowning in debt he was too proud to admit. "Victor," finally, the old man said, "show me your grain." Voice softening for the first time that morning. "Show me your grain." Victor stepped forward, his hands rough with calluses, his clothes simple as they had always been. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he gestured toward the compound gate, where two farmhands wheeled in baskets overflowing with golden corn. Harvest after harvest, grown from that single grain his brothers had discarded without a thought. "I planted it, Papa," he said simply. "Then I planted what it gave me. Then I planted that again. This season, when the drought came, this corn fed my household and the families around me who had nothing left in their stores." The courtyard fell silent, except for the soft rustle of corn husks as the baskets were set down before the old man. Chief Anthony rose slowly from his chair, leaning on his walking stick, and walked toward his youngest son. He placed both hands on Victor's shoulders, his eyes wet with something the family had never seen from him: open, unguarded pride. "This was never a test about corn," he said, turning to address the entire gathered family, his voice strong despite his weakened body. "It was a test of what a man does with what little he is given, and whether he can be trusted with much. Michael and David were given the same grain Victor received, and they treated it as worthless because it did not glitter. Victor understood that worth is built, not inherited." He turned to his eldest sons, who stood frozen, their reputations now laid bare before the same family they had spent a year deceiving. "I have already settled your debts in silence, hoping you would rise to meet what I gave you. You did not. From this day, the land, the warehouses, the trade routes, everything I have built passes to Victor, who multiplied what was given to him while you discarded it and hid behind my name." Michael tried to speak, but his voice failed him, the words dissolving somewhere between his throat and his pride. David lowered his head, unable to meet the eyes of the relatives whose respect he had performed for rather than earned, his shoulders curling inwards as though he could fold himself small enough to disappear from the courtyard entirely. There was no anger in the gathering now, only the quiet, heavy weight of public truth, the very thing both men had spent a year trying to outrun, and the very thing that had finally caught them in front of everyone who had ever called them by their father's name with pride. Victor knelt before his father, not in triumph, but in something closer to humility, his rough hand still bearing the faint marks of soil that no amount of washing could fully remove. "Papa, let me share with my brothers. They are still your sons, they are still my blood, and whatever foolishness they carried this past year, I do not wish to see them hungry or homeless because of it." Chief Anthony nodded slowly, his eyes glistening with tears he made no effort to hide. "That," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "is exactly why you deserve it. A man who shares what he has earned with the very brothers who mocked him is a man who has truly understood what I tried to teach all three of you this past year." The family gathering that had begun in tension ended in something the village would speak of for seasons afterwards. Not merely the punishment of two foolish sons, but the quiet rise of a third who understood all along that patience, planted carefully, grows into something no amount of borrowed wealth, false confidence, or inherited pride could ever buy. Tell me, if you were given one small thing and one full year, would you have planted it or thrown it away, chasing something bigger? If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless you.